A woman called Judith Hawkey, living in Oakwood, Ohio, seemed like someone leading a normal life on the outside. But beneath quiet appearances, something far darker was growing, something that would shatter trust, family, and childhood itself. It was November 3rd, 2003. A man named Robert Breininger, aged 34, was found in his home in Mark Center, Ohio, with a single gunshot wound to the head. He had a stepson, Corey, who was 10 years old at the time. When the police came, the story given was that it was a tragic accident. Corey had shot his own father while they were handling a gun, supposedly by accident. The coroner's verdict matched that: accidental death. Everyone believed that was the end of it, for a while. But years later, the truth dimly began to emerge. Corey had carried something inside him: regret, fear, confusion. Around 2012, as a teenager, he confided in a teacher. He said things were not as they seemed. He said his stepmother, Judith, had forced him to shoot his father and made him lie about what happened. He said he had been mistreated, emotionally manipulated, even frightened into silence. Investigators reopened the case. Evidence built up. Testimonies from Corey, who now spoke with the weight of years bearing down. Statements from teachers, indications of abuse spanning several years while he was still young. And there was another motive, one that tied everything together. Judith Hawkey had collected nearly $500,000 in life insurance on Robert soon after his death. It raised questions. Who benefited, and how much was planned from the start? In 2013, after a grand jury indicted Judith Hawkey, the courtroom spotlight turned to a mother, a child, and the damage done when fear replaces safety. The defense argued that the evidence was based almost entirely on Corey's later statements, on memories shaped by trauma, and that his story changed over time. The prosecution argued that all of it together, motive, insurance, abuse, Corey's testimony, painted a picture only one way. The day of sentencing came. On December 18th, 2013, the judge looked at the case, at what had come out in court. Years of emotional toll on Corey. The life lost, the trust destroyed. The judge called Judith's actions evil beyond description. Hawkey was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Corey, the weight of a secret lifted somewhat, but the scars remained. He spoke afterward of relief, of finally being heard, of the burden he'd carried alone for nearly a decade. He said he hoped now he could move forward, though he understood that what happened would follow him forever. This case leaves many uneasy questions. How does a childhood trauma stay hidden so long? How do family, community, institutions miss or dismiss signs of abuse? How much damage is done when someone is forced into silence, and how brave it is to speak up years later? Because at its heart, this story isn't just about grief or guilt. It's about a child's voice that eventually broke the silence. It's about loss of a father, but also about a young boy's fight to reclaim truth. And it's about how justice, delayed though it was, finally came. Lyda Catherine Ambrose was born in 1891 in Missouri. Little is known of her early life, but by 1917, she emerged into public attention in a way that would shock local communities. The story that followed would come to define the phrase "Black Widow" in its darkest form. Her crimes stretched over a few years, from about 1917 to 1920. What links them all? Lyda's husbands or lovers, all of whom died under suspicious circumstances, and life insurance policies. She wasn't content to mourn. She seemed driven by a cold calculation. It starts simply. Lyda's first fiancé in Keatsville, Missouri, grew ill soon after they arranged for a life insurance policy naming her beneficiary. He died after complaining of stomach pains. It was accepted as natural or incidental illness, but it was only the beginning. Not long after, Lyda married her late fiancé's brother. Within 3 months, he too passed away, again with similar complaints. Again, Lyda collected insurance money. A pattern began to form, though some people still saw only misfortune. Lyda then moved to Twin Falls, Idaho. she married a restaurant owner, the man where she had worked as a waitress. They were wed around mid-1918. Soon after, he died of stomach ulcers, so the record said. But this time, she couldn't collect any insurance. He hadn't signed the documents. A rare oversight, but she didn't dwell on it. She moved on. Ever persistent, she found another husband. This time, the paperwork was in order. Within a few months of marriage, the man died. This death gave her about $10,000 from the life insurance. By October 1920, Lyda married yet again. Barely a month passed before her newest husband died. He had just taken out a policy that named Lyda the beneficiary, and soon after, she collected $12,000. It was beginning to look like more than just bad luck. Authorities didn't immediately piece the pattern together. It took suspicious deaths, repeated widowhood, and exhumations. What finally broke the case open was the discovery of arsenic in the remains of several of Lyda's late husbands. Flypaper soaked with arsenic was found in her home, evidence strong enough to suggest foul play rather than illness. She was arrested in December 1920, taken into custody in Oakland, California, and then sent back to Idaho where the latter murders had occurred. She was convicted of first-degree murder. Her motive was clear: life insurance. She had used charm, marriage, and timing as tools. Her sentence was life imprisonment. But her story didn't end there. In May 1931, Ambrose escaped from the Idaho State Prison. For about a year, she was on the run, reportedly seeking a new husband under an alias. But in 1932, she was recaptured in Kansas City. She spent the rest of her life in prison, dying there in old age. Martha Marek, née Löwenstein, was born in Vienna in 1897. Early in life, she lost her birth parents and was raised by a family that struggled. Poverty was her background. Even as a young woman, she developed a taste for elegance and the high life. She began working in a dress shop, then caught the attention of a much older, wealthy man named Moritz Fritsch. He became her mentor of sorts, and from him, she inherited property and some money when he died. That inheritance gave Martha a glimpse of a world she craved. She later married an engineer named Emil Marek. Together, they lived lavishly, but the money ran out, and debt followed. To maintain her lifestyle, Martha began to scheme. They took out insurance policies on Emil, their children, relatives. Then, when that wasn't enough, she turned to more drastic measures. Her first plan with Emil was extreme. They staged an accident. Martha persuaded Emil to chop wood and arranged for an injury so that he could collect from insurance. Emil lost his leg. But in court, doctors noted the wounds were from 3 separate blows, and the angles didn't match the story of an accident. The insurance company refused to pay the full claim. Then the deaths started happening. Their baby daughter, Ingeborg, who had a life insurance policy, fell ill and died soon afterward. An elderly relative, Suzanne Lowenstein, who had made Martha her heir, died shortly after showing strange symptoms. Martha inherited her house and assets. And finally, a lodger named Felicitas Kitzsteiner, someone who lived under Martha's roof, was insured in Martha's favor. After Kitzsteiner died, neighbors reported she had said things she ate or drank at Martha's house made her violently ill. These suspicions led to exhumations. When the bodies were exhumed, forensic tests revealed that all 4 victims had been poisoned with thallium, a toxic metal known for its ability to kill slowly and leave symptoms that can mimic other illnesses. During her trial in 1938, Martha tried to hide behind claims of illness. She feigned paralysis, claimed she couldn't walk, used a wheelchair, even acted blind. But the evidence was strong. A pharmacist confirmed she had bought thallium, often enough that the amount could have been used on many more victims than those she was accused of. Because Austria's political situation had changed, annexation by Nazi Germany, the death penalty had been reinstated. On December 6, 1938, Martha Marek was executed by guillotine in Vienna. She refused to fully admit guilt. but stood convicted of the murders of her husband, daughter, and her lodger. Her case shocked Vienna, and later generations. It stirred debate about how much desperation, greed, or ambition can drive someone to betray even those closest to them. It raised questions of trust, how money motives and insurance can become lethal, and how society sometimes overlooks early warning signs.